Hi everyone and welcome to a video on ISO. How high shall I go with my ISO? Now I'd just like to say before I go any further that this is just my take on this. I know a lot of photographers won't like to go above 400, 800 or whatever, but my philosophy is this, right? At the end of the day, ISOs will introduce noise, but not only will they introduce noise, now I don't know if you know this or not, but not only will it introduce noise, but it'll also introduce less colour saturation. It's a bit like shooting a JPEG vis a RAW. A JPEG will give you less editing capabilities than a RAW. An ISO image will give you less colour saturation and less dynamic range than a RAW file or than a low ISO file. So you've got to ask yourself this, that by turning your ISO up, one, you lose editing capabilities. Not that you can't edit the file, but that it might not edit as hard as you could edit a low ISO file. But then it goes down to, if you think about the RAW vs JPEG, now we all know that a RAW file is a better file than a JPEG. There's no two ways about it, but do you need a JPEG? Or do you need a RAW? It all comes down to that in the end, that, you know, if you want to shoot loads of pictures in high-speed continuous, you'd be better off in JPEG, because your buffer will hold out a lot longer and you'll be able to shoot more shots. Are you only going to print it out A4? If you're only going to print it out A4 and you get the, like if we look at the exposure on me now with a video, I know that it's not a million miles away. There's no reason why I won't be able to shoot a JPEG. I mean, obviously it's a video, but why I won't be able to shoot a JPEG and do a little edit on it, you know, boost sharpness, bit of contrast, bit of saturation, whatever you want to do, there's no reason why you can't do that. Do you know, I'm shooting this video, by the way, with a nifty 50 at f2 autofocus on the 70D, so we'll see how it gets on. I'm using the two pictures behind to frame me in. I'm quite near to them. I would like to be a lot further forward, but the camera's near the TV. And I am using a hint of video light. So I know a lot of photographers that'll just say, well, don't go to this ISO because you lose your colour saturation, you lose your editing capabilities, you get grain. Now, the be all and end all is, right, and this is my take on it, how are you going to edit it? How big is it going to, I mean, if a bride rang me and says, look, John, I need you to do my wedding, and all the pictures, I want an album at 60 inches in size, then I'd be panicking, because I'd be thinking, how the hell can I go in the church and photograph with no flash at ISO 200 or 400 so that they aren't going to see the grain in the album? Now that's never ever going to happen. That's just a load of bollocks. Usually your album, it'll be A4, maybe a touch bigger, and that's it. And there's no reason why modern DSLR, like the 50D, 60D, 70D, T2i, T3i, 700D, why they can't record, why you can't take a picture at ISO 3200, admittedly, like this bloke said the other day, it's not just grain that you introduce. You do lose a bit of colour saturation and a little bit of dynamic range, but the be all and end all is, are you going to see it on the final image? Stop pixel peeping, stop going onto Photoshop, zooming into 200% and going, oh my good lord, I can see noise, I need to go down to 200 ISO instead and use a fifth of a second shutter speed and get blurred images. At the end of the day, your ISO should be, in my eyes, there's no two ways about it, your ISO should be what it has to be. Like now, I'm at a 30th of a second on that camera that I'm recording on, I can't go any slower. I'm at f2, I can go to f1.8, but I want f2 because the lens is a bit soft at f1.8, so I'm at f2, and then I have to use the ISO on the camera to where it needs to be to get this exposure. I've got it at 200 at the minute. I could have ran it at 400 and got the same exposure that I'm getting now. But obviously in this scenario, I can use some artificial light. So that's probably just stopping me from putting my ISO to 400. I've got it at 200 and I'm using a bit of fill light. But that might not be the case in the church. If you're at, I don't know, a 60th of a second, if that's the slowest you dare go, at f2.8, and you can't go any lower, your ISO has to be what it has to be to get your exposure. And if it's 3200, it's 3200. There ain't no point going, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Just take pictures and come home, give them a tweak and print them out and you'll find out they'll look great. Come home, get straight into Lightroom, boom, 100%. Sit there going, I've got grain on me images. Who gives a At the end of the day, print it and it'll look great. And if you're not 100% sure how good your camera is, then if you know that you're, like I'm a wedding photographer, the light's just gone in outside, so sorry the exposure's going to change. I'm a photographer and I know that my wedding albums are A4. So when I get all my new cameras, I always get raw files. I might edit them on the contrast and stuff, but I won't do any noise reduction. I'll take a raw file at 1600, 3200, 64 and 1:8 and get them printed. And that way, that's not 100% in Photoshop. That's reality for me. That is a reality. Not 100% in Photoshop, but a 12:8 print. And I look at them pictures and I find out that these ISOs don't make any difference. And yes, they do. I have noticed that ISOs do make a difference on their colour saturation and stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, you have to be where you have to be. But you have got to ask yourself, are you at that ISO because you don't know what you're doing? Now, I'm not knocking anybody for not knowing what they're doing, don't take me wrong, but what I'm saying is, I've worked with photographers before, and when I've looked at the raw files, they've been at f8 at 6400 in-house. Now, that's not, I'm sorry, but that's wrong. There's no reason for you to be at ISO 6400 at f8, and it wasn't even a group shot, do you know what I mean? There were no reason why I couldn't have dropped to f4 and been at ISO 800. That's not getting your ISO where it needs to be. What that is doing is you don't know what you're doing and you're making mistakes. Which I'm not knocking you for. We've all done it. I still do it now. Under pressure at a wedding, I make mistakes that I don't make when I'm not under pressure. And that's what a wedding's about. And that's what pressures a lot of people. At a wedding, I'm stood here now and I'm waiting for you to get me a nice shot in a couple of seconds. It's not like a studio where you can move the light, try it, move the light again, take another shot, get your light meter out. It's not like that. So remember, with ISOs, yes, you don't only get grain on your images, you will notice that the exposure and your saturation will be less. But you can tweak it in post and tweak it for what you're doing. Not for, at the end of the day, if you're going to live in Lightroom and Photoshop at 100%, you need to go out and buy yourself the latest 5D Mark III with a 1.2 lens, and then you can live in Photoshop at 100% then, at 6400 or 3200, and you'll have clean images. But you won't be that won't be reality for you though. All you'll do is look in Photoshop and go. And another thing, why I don't use a lot of primes anymore, don't get me wrong, I love my primes. And I've got my 50mm now. I'm using the Nifty 50. I have to sell my 50mm 1.4 to buy my 2040-105 and my new 70D. Now I am going to buy one of them back. I only got 40 quid less and I paid for it brand new. So I'm going to replace that because that was a really love lens. But what you find out is, when you're doing weddings and christenings, it's alright at those apertures 1.4 f8, 1.4, 1.8 f2, but no's ever in focus, do you know what I mean? The depth of field, you ain't got no depth of field, and some of your customers will look at the pictures and go, it looks a bit soft, even though you focused on the bride in the middle of the shot. So it comes at a cost, there's a low light lens, but it will give you those good capabilities for blurring backgrounds, getting creative, keeping your ISO down when need be. But I find out that ISO, if I were really worried about ISO, I would have got a full frame a 5D Mark II or a Nikon D3S years ago. But I know that it's not reality for me, and you don't see it on the images. Do the test yourself. I highly recommend it. Get your camera now. Whack a print off at 1600 or 800, wherever you want to start. A reality print size, not an unreality print size. Get it 8, 16, 32, 64, 1 to 8 and have a look. And then get the same images that you sent for print, before you crop them for print, by the way, but the same image. Zoom it into 100% in Photoshop and get your print and hold it next to it and see they actually look nothing like. Now, they should look like on the colour and stuff like that if you've got a calibrated screen, but I mean the grain. And all the amazing little details that you can see in Photoshop or Lightroom at 100%, you won't be seeing that A4 print. And that's reality. Don't be afraid to push your ISO up, guys. And that's just my take on it. Somebody may have a different take, but I do like to think that the take is correct. That obviously turn your ISO up, you do get lots more noise, that's true. You do get less editing capabilities, you don't use dynamic ranging as much. And I will highly recommend getting a decent exposure when you're up at high ISOs. Like now, this is slightly under, I can see it on camera. I'd like to turn the main light up a little bit, but I'm not gonna, it's just a YouTube video. But if this were a ISO 16, 3200 image, I'd get it all up a bit brighter so that my t-shirt would have less noise in it. And that's why you find out film producers, people go, why do they have film on a T2i and it looks clean at 1600? That's because they get the scene lit correctly, so they ain't got no underexposed blacks. Underexposed blacks will give you noise at ISO 200, let alone 16, 32 or 64. So get your exposure right. I know it isn't always feasible for us photographers to start bringing out loads of lights like a film producer, but I'm just saying get your exposure as good as you can and you'll find out this ISO, especially on new DSLRs, is irrelevant. Thanks for watching. Please comment and subscribe, and let's see how the Nifty 50 in autofocus held out on this video.